Hello and welcome to Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. Today we are diving into a crucial topic for many of our viewers: 221G, administrative processing for H1B visas. If you're here watching this show, I'm sure you have either received a 221G or you are a visa applicant preparing for a no 221G during your visa application process. Your visa application and 221G can be a turning point in your journey towards working in the US with an H1B visa. And we are here today to shed some light on what it entails, how it impacts your visa application, and tips to navigate successfully. We'll discuss common reasons why applications go into administrative processing and offer expert advice on how to handle potential delays or requests for additional information. So stay until the end of the show. We will come right back. Show, we have Yvette Bansal, who's a former US Consular Officer who served in New Delhi and Mumbai as an H1B lead, adjudicating a whopping 40,000 visas. Most of them are H1B visas. And she's here. Now she has set up a service to support the community and under the name Udeti Visa Services. And I'm sure she has helped a lot of us realize the American dream. My name is Dan Nandan. I'm the president of Hire IT People Inc. I've been supporting the community for over 15 years via conference calls. And now we have Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. If you're the first timer or if you've been visiting our channels on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and by the way, this stream is live on YouTube at Immigration Talk Show, and we are also streaming live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and multiple Facebook groups. And before we get started, please note the information on our shows, including experts or attorneys, is not legal advice, including any replies and comments from users. So please use information at your own risk. And so stay with us as we unpack everything about the you need to know about 221G administrative processing. There's a lot to cover. And if you have a question, you can post a comment on wherever you're watching this show. I will do my best to take all your comments and ask Yvette. So before further ado, let's welcome Yvette Bansal to the show. Yvette, thank you for accepting my invite and joining our show. And before we get started, I will open the conference lines as well. Um,
Unmuted.
and if you are joining via conference bridge, you can call those numbers and press star 6 to ask a question. So, Yvette, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you, Dan?
I'm all right. And, once again, thanks for joining our show. I know it's 40,000 visas in about 4 years is a lot. I was running some math. Is it like 100 applications, adjudicating 100 applications a day? Isn't that a lot of work?
It's about 120 applicants in 3.5 hours in the morning, and then IW cases in the afternoon. So it is a lot.
Wow. Wow. So, once again, Yvette, if you can give a little intro on your background and how you served the community, um, you know, to help people realize their American dream. I know I don't want to get into the nuances of what happened during the 40,000 visas, but we would just like to get a little background of what you have done in the past as a consular officer and what you're doing now.
Great. Well, thank you again for having me, Dan. You have an awesome show. I really appreciate your time and energy. I used to be a consular officer. I served the US government for 11 years, and I served in Mumbai and New Delhi specifically for almost 5 years. And I was the H1B lead. And once I got to Mumbai after Delhi, I created the H1B training. I was also a former deputy fraud prevention manager in Mumbai. So I essentially worked in consular affairs. After I decided I wanted to go back to Illinois to be closer to my family, I started a company called Udeti, in which I offer visa interview preparation services because there's a huge need, especially when I saw it in the Indian community, for information and consultation because the adjudication process is difficult for a lot of people. People want to consult with somebody who's been there, so I started the company for that reason.
Okay, so Udeti visas. I really like the name. So what's the can we? I still couldn't get the the is it like an English word or some other language?
It's a Sanskrit word. It means rise up and overcome.
Oh, it's Sanskrit. Okay, I know that a lot of people probably have forgotten Sanskrit, but then I think more than trying to get the 221G. I think we can take some lessons on Sanskrit as well. That's interesting. So I would like to, before talking too much, I would like to first get into the introduction on 221G. So can you explain what 221G administrative processing is, particularly in the context of H1B visa applications? And before you answer, if anyone watching this show, please post comments. I will only take those questions which are relevant to consulates. We're not talking about USCIS or I-129 or H-1B petitions or green cards. Her expertise is mostly since being a consular officer herself in the former consular officer at New Delhi, Mumbai, India for almost over 4 years. So we will circle around relevant questions about the 221G. So, and what is the adjudication process? And in general, what is the 221G and what is the 290 Immigration and Nationality Act? Can you shed some light, please?
221G is actually technically a refusal, but people call it administrative processing because it's not used as as a refusal, but it's technically a refusal until you submit additional documentation where the visa officer can eventually either approve or, in the case of the H1B, revoke your visa, or if you have an ineligibility, then you will be denied based on that ineligibility. So, in the context of 221G administrative processing, it essentially means that the consular officer needs to do some research. They need to look into something in your background. They need to look into the company. So, they will give you a 221G letter requesting something from you, or they will just give you a 221G letter saying that they need to review something. So, it's an administrative process to get further clarity so that the consular officer can make their decision in simple terms.
Okay. Now we do have, some comments are floating. I definitely, a lot of my guests don't like when I skip the topics, but I definitely want to focus on my viewers first. So I'll take the first question from Angie on YouTube. We had an H1B group interview. I'm not sure what that is at US Embassy, London on November 7th. Got a 221G white slip for administrative processing. Currently on tier 2 visa in the United Kingdom. Any suggestions?
I would suggest that if you have an administrative processing letter and it's requesting something of you, to submit the information as soon as possible. And we'll talk about this a little bit later, but there's ways you can follow up if too much time has passed with the consular information unit or that email that is noted in your 221G slip. You can also reply back to H&L processing if you receive a letter with that specific email. So that is my suggestion. As soon as possible, give them back the information and complete information that they're requesting. And after a little bit of time, a week, a couple weeks, you can go ahead and send a follow-up email.
All right, Angie, looks like your question is a little vague, so I just displayed her email. So if you need more guidance, you could simply email Yvette at YB at Udeti Visa. One word, Udeti Visa, or you can log on to udetivisa.com. Now, as a follow up to Angie's question here, can we can you explain what is this white, blue, pink slips? Why there are colors, or is just just for reference.
Yeah, a lot of people speculate on different aspects of the adjudication process. Every single consulate or embassy has different colored paper, one for 214B, one for ineligibilities, and one for H1B processing. The colors don't mean anything. It's what the consulate or embassy decided to use. Some of them are green, some of them are blue. It has no meaning. It's just a colored piece of paper that requests for more information in the case of 221G processing. It'll have a checklist where the officer generally checks off what they want the applicant to submit, or sometimes it'll have other and like a blank line, and the consular officer will write out what they want.
So, for newcomers here who have never had, I hope you never get a 221G. But if you are preparing for a visa interview, I have posted a sample 221G letter. This was from New Delhi Embassy. I don't know if that's Yvette's writing in the past. This is like an older,
Could be.
221G letter. But then, for folks who attended visa interviews during 2008 and 12, specifically at New Delhi and Mumbai consulates, now you have a face, because when you go to consular windows, you don't even know the names of the consular officers. At least now we get to see her. Thank you. So uh, let me jump into, I have a lot of questions under my topic, circling around 221G. But then why not we simply jump into something, based on your experience all these years? What are the top 5 tips to avoid a
Okay.
221G?
Okay. I want people to get out a pen and paper. This is the presentation portion, which I'm not going to have a PowerPoint, but I'm going to talk a lot. So, tips to avoid. First, you want to prepare for the common questions that you're going to be asked. This is a complicated topic. We're going to try to break it down. Common questions. Who's your petitioner? Who's your client if you have an end client? What are your work duties? How did you find your job? How long have you been working for your current employer or end client? If you're working on a product, what is your product? Where is your office located? What is your salary? What is your highest level of education? And then questions about dependents. These are common questions, so you need to be prepared for them. Prepare answers for less common questions. What is the interview process like? What was the interview? So the question is, what was your interview process like for your petitioner or for your end client? How long have you been working for your end client? That's a little bit more common. So if you're going from a very known petitioner like Amazon to an unknown petitioner, you may get a question about that you may not be prepared for. So prepare an answer for that. Why do you live so far away from your work location? Any questions about your work location could be asked that might catch you off guard. How many employees does your employer have? How many employees work at your work location? What is the total turnover? How much revenue does your company make? Describe your company. Okay, so these could be a little bit like less common digging questions. This is an interesting question. Describe the relationship between your end client and all the middle vendors. So sometimes you'll have a petitioner, an end client, and 2 to 3 middle vendors. See, that's something that the consular officer may ask about. You need to be prepared for that. So the third tip, so prepare prepare answers for common questions and then uncommon questions. Your third tip is have your basic documents ready. Okay, so commonly asked for W-2s, tax returns, if you've been working in the US already as an H1B, pay stubs, an end client letter, always going to be asked for an end client letter. Please have it prepared. If you do not have an end client letter because the end client routinely does not offer them, have some email correspondence instead, that basically you asking your employer, hi, please confirm that I work for you. And they respond with, yes, you do. Your LCA, all the I-797s that you've been issued if this is not your first H-1B, court documents if you've ever been arrested. So I'll always have that ready. These are all tips to avoid 221G. You don't want to have some sort of arrest like a DUI and then not have your court documents, because then maybe they won't send you to panel right away. Maybe they'll 221G you and send you to panel. So if you have the court documents, that's one less thing. A letter from your employer stating your salary and work responsibilities. So, this employee works for me. They've been working for me since this date. These are their work responsibilities and these are their salary. They're in good standing. Make sure that the letter is a recently dated letter, that your documents are dated recently. You don't want to give something to the consular officer that's way too far back, because that could cause a 221G. Less asked for things are education documents, transcripts, or degrees, or your past I-20s. If you were an F student, these are less commonly asked for, but you could have them. Middle vendor documents. So this is something that's not routinely asked for, but if you have a middle vendor relationship or multiple layers of hiring, have some documentation to explain that relationship to the consular officer to the best of your ability. Other legal documents, USCIS documents, are generally not asked for. The LCA sometimes, but other legal documents not generally asked for, but you could have them just in case. So that's the tip. Have your basic documents ready. The last two tips is answer questions truthfully in the interview and on the DS. The DS 160, for example, if you've been arrested in the United States at any point in time, please do say that, yes, I've been arrested. Don't try to hide that. That will delay things. Answer questions directly. Don't try to confuse the consular officer or hide the information so that they just let something go. They will G you and start digging in that case. So those are my 5 tips. And I want to say the good news is there's only certain reasons why your petition can get revoked. So for the last tip of not hiding anything, it's if USCIS has already adjudicated your petition, unless something egregious comes up, your biggest fear should be 221G. So unless it's something egregious, you shouldn't be hiding minor details, because it sometimes does not have any bearing on your case. But if you're trying to hide a minor detail and then the officer starts digging, that could be a 221G, which, as we know, could be as good as a revocation, because it will delay things substantially for you. So those are my 5 tips, Dan.
Wow. You know what? I'm super excited with, I'd like to really, have this rocking conversation, to go on. And for viewers out there, I do see your comments. I will take those comments, and as long as it's relevant to 221G and consulates. But then, since this is getting a little pretty hot, and I know it's snowing out there, but then
Yeah.
hot. Good to have some hot coffee now. But then please take a moment to like and share the live video. So we are going to help someone out there. Many of your friends, maybe they haven't got the message. We've been promoting, sending out messages to our known network on groups and emails and WhatsApp groups. But then, just take a moment to like and share, so we can help others as well. And we'll come right after this. All right, welcome back. I hope you. I do see that because the number is just increasing here. So we'll jump. I'll see if I can take one comment here. We have Sridevi Devin from YouTube. Traveling to India, my H4 stamping is on the 8th of December, and my husband's H1B is on December 13th. Wow. Concerned about 221G for H1B. If the H4 is earlier, can appointments be swapped?
Fantastic question. It's
right?
actually something I completely forgot about when we were 221Ging. I don't know if your appointments can be swapped. I've never heard of appointment swapping. I've heard of appointment poaching, but not swapping. But what's going to happen is, yes, you are going to be in 221G in that scenario. So you go to the consular officer for your H4 stamping. They're going to ask you questions about the relationship, have some wedding pictures, have a marriage certificate. Usually, this is an easy breezy appointment for an H4. Sometimes so the likely scenario is you'll receive 221G and it'll say 221G until your husband receives his H1B. And once your husband receives his H1B, then your H4 will be issued. So that is the process.
Okay, but I do have, I'm a little confused myself with the, if the H1B has expired, or they have an active I-797 and they're just going for a visa stamping. Now, what happens if the H4, because based on the spouse, she or he is going for H4, assuming there's no problem with the H4. Now, once the H1B goes back, because there's a lag here, 8th and 13th of December. And what happens if the principal H1B holder is put into 221G? Is the H4 still valid?
If that's why, okay, the reason why the H4 is going to be going into 221G is to ensure the H1B is valid. And the new I-797 could perhaps have a new petitioner. So once the H1B is valid, the H4 can be issued basis the H1B. That's why the 221G happens, because her interview is before her husband's. Did I answer your question?
Perfect. Yes, of course. So let's jump into a question from our topics here. Uh, we just want to know, they've been H1Bs have been there for almost 30, more than 30 years now. But then, based on your experience as a former U.S. consular officer, and you've been serving the community at Udeti Visa Services, what is the statistical overview of the 221Gs? What is the percentage of, this is like, what they call classified. I'm just, trying to get some info to our viewers today. Usually, out of 10 applications, how many applications um, go into a 221G?
This is not an exact science. Based on my experience, for every 30 to 40 applicants, maybe one will go into 221G.
Wow, so that's a very small number.
It is a very small number, but when you're adjudicating that many cases, it can be a large number. So the other
So
thing, mhm.
yeah, please go ahead.
The other thing is, out of those 221Gs, that the ones that actually go into revocation is, maybe I can't give a specific answer, but maybe once every few months a H1B for me personally would be revoked. So then you can combine other consular officers, you have 10, 12 at a consulate in the window. So 221G is typically resolved. It doesn't generally go into revocation. So then the statistics for revocation are even smaller. It's a fraction of the 221Gs.
Now, I do have, it's not a typical follow-up question here, but then many times I read on forums, and also, from some of my employees in the past, when someone went to a consular officer for an H1B visa interview,
Hmm.
uh, the consular officer has not asked me any questions. He or he just handed me a 221G letter.
Hmm.
Is this
No. Mhm.
is this possible, or it's just that people are speculating?
Usually, for a 221G for an H1B, it could be that for B1, B2, that is very common. Maybe one question. I mean, obviously, no questions is not going to happen. At least one question will happen. For B1, B2s, you can get refused after one question. Typically, for 221G, for H1Bs, the consular officer wants to gather more information. There's basic information that each consular officer needs to attain, like the salary, the employer, level of education, these basic things. So they should be asking at least something before handing them a 221G slip typically, unless there is a system issue or something minor or something extreme, like something from fraud that's very extreme, that's flagged. That is typically not the case. Usually there's at least a series of questions and then communication about what further information the consular officer needs. And that's done because we don't call the applicant back in for another interview typically. That's very rare. So we want to gather as much information from that applicant as possible so that we don't require more information in person. And then we can just get the written information via 221G and then issue the case. So that's done for us because it's a higher, there's no 214B. We can't just refuse an H1B. So information needs to be gathered. That's the typical scenario.
Okay, so you heard that about, we still have, a lot of comments floating in. I see a lot of interesting questions here. We will take those comments, and then I do have more serious questions for Yvette. Serious, don't take it seriously when I said serious, but then we will come right after this.
Are you an IT consultant seeking a new opportunity? We offer job placement services for US citizens, green cards, EADs, and visa holders. We also sponsor various work visas like H1B, E3, TN, and green cards. 20 plus years of experience in the industry, exceptional employee benefits, highly rated by our employees, global presence with 200 plus recruiters and direct clients. Connect with us. Call us on the number 833-412-8472 or mail us at support@higheritpeople.com or visit our website www.higheritpeople.com.
All right, welcome back. I think it's getting a little more interesting now. As I promised, I am going to take a few questions. Please keep sending those comments. We'll do our best to take each and every question. And if for some reason time is of the essence, we have to end the show, I will still get all the questions together and we will answer by commenting back on these live platforms. So don't go anywhere. Now, next question is from Teresita. And if I didn't pronounce it right, my apologies. Hello. When given 221G administrative processing letter, in how many days can I expect a reply from consulate? It's already a month's time completed. I'm assuming she or he has sent a response. So this is a typical and a common question about how long does it take?
Okay, so to answer this question, I'll give you a little bit of insight about what goes on during administrative processing. So the answer is definitely depends. The first step when a consular officer reviews your case, if there are some indicators that further research needs to be done. For example, if you don't have your end client letter, so as I was saying, you need to understand your end client, your work duties. If you have an end client and you don't have an end client letter, and the officer wants to see it, they can 221G for that letter. And when that letter comes in, they can look at your case as a whole and say, I believe this applicant, this is perfect. And this is just an example, you guys. This is perfect. I'm going to go ahead and issue that case. And this is just one example of why the length of time varies and one example of what could potentially be happening in 221G. So for this case, I want a 221G for an end client letter, they could issue as soon as they get that end client letter. Now, consular officers are working on multiple cases at a time. They have IW cases, they work in the morning. So depending on the speed of that consular officer, sometimes some consulates are faster than others. I can't tell you which is which, it fluctuates. So if that consular officer gets to your end client letter, says, hey, this is good to go, then it could be just a few days. And then they ask you to submit your passport, things are good to go. If they look at the end client letter and says, I don't believe that this person is working for this end client. Let me do an end client verification. In that case, they could utilize consular investigative tools. I'm not going to go into all that to verify. And so that verification, depending on how long that takes, it could delay the time. So if there's consular investigative tools being implemented here, you have to send the end client letter. The consular officer has to request verification. That employer has to verify, and then you might hear back. So that's just one example. Other examples require further investigation that may take longer periods of time. Consular officers could also do request things like site visits or further research into the company, and that could take a lot of time. So though, with that being said, it doesn't necessarily mean that investigations are being done if it's taking a longer period of time. However, if it's taking a very long period of time, that's likely what's happening. But it's also, less common that the consular officer is just sitting on the case, meaning they have prioritized other case over this one. And that is why I recommend that either way, especially if a month has passed. I would say if 2 to 3 weeks have passed, you have submitted what you need to submit, to reach out to CIU. So if you Google CIU, that's the Consular Information Unit, for your specific consulate or embassy, you can email them and you can say, hey, my case has been pending for 3 weeks. May I get an update? And in that case, CIU generally, the flow works differently for different places. CIU generally will ping the officer, and the officer will be like, oh, I got to make this case a priority. So there's a lot of things happening in the background, and the timeline really depends. A lot of it is on luck, workflow, and what really is going on in that 221G. I hope I've answered that question.
Sure, sure. Now, I will, because we already completed over 30 minutes, but I do have these comments really floating in. And, thank you, folks out there, for the support. And looks like this is, I think we probably need to have more 221G episodes, maybe 221 episodes on 221G. But this is coming from someone. This is homecoming for you, Yvette. Homecoming, you're going to like this. I got 221G a year back at Mumbai consulate. She wasn't there a year back, so someone else. While H1 stamping, my H1B stamping during that period, I received an email that USCIS will review and possibly revoke my H1B. After that, my employer tried to put an amendment for address change. The comment is cut off on the screen, but I can read this for you. I can see it here. After that, I think he received, I think the consulate sent it back to the USCIS for a further review, and the USCIS sent an intent to revoke the H1B. And after that, the employer tried to put an amendment for address change on the application went on hold due to security check. I'm still working with my client and they're waiting for me to come back to the US. I want to know how much time it's going to take. Wow.
Yeah, so after the intent to revoke, you have 30 days to appeal the decision, which it sounds like that is what's going on now. I can't really give you a time frame for USCIS. It sounds like you're doing what you can to appeal that decision, and the process is in motion. If you're successful, then hopefully that will be issued. If you're not successful, then that H1B will be revoked.
Okay. The next question was answered. Asif, she just spoke about how long does it take and how to get updates. So hopefully you heard that. I see you, sitting here on the show. So if you have missed this, when once we are done with the show, you could just rewind and go back to 34 minutes, about 30 to 33 minutes. You can fast forward and check the answer right there. And before I take the next question here, I would like to go back to our original discussion. So there are certain interesting topics still left. Um, I know here and there, based on the comments, you have answered this question, but I would like to get a straightforward answer on what triggers a 221G during an H1B visa interview. Would this be based on the applicant or the documentation or the petitioning employer? So, or all together?
All of it. So, and consular officer is supposed to take the approved I-797 as evidence of entitlement of your H1B. The only way that your visa can get revoked is if there's additional information that comes to light that is beyond the scope or beyond what USCIS already had in their arsenal when they approved the I-797. So the bar is high. Consular officers are looking for indicators that perhaps if a beneficiary, if they believe that a beneficiary is not expected at the client site for some reason, you can't answer questions about the end client or talk about your job. If you talk about an end product and the location doesn't really match an end product. So these are all indicators of further information and why 221G can be triggered. So other things is, let me just kind of go back. So there's two types of cases. One is client projects and one is internal projects. For each of them, there are different things that consular officers are looking for. And for internal projects, for example, if the petitioner is not known, or if the petitioner, the company itself is just a small company or has had some issues in the past, if the way that you got your job seems off to the consular officer. So to sum this up, okay, in a way, in more simple terms, it could be the petitioner or it could be the beneficiary that's triggering this. Something about the job, the location, the end client, the project seems off. And the consular officer wants to make sure that this company exists. It's a legitimate company. You truly have a job. Everything that's on your LCA matches up with exactly what you're telling the consular officer. So something like your salary doesn't match what that job role is. If you tell me you're, a technical engineer with 13 years of experience, but you tell me you also make $56,000 a year, that can trigger a 221G. So anything that doesn't add up could trigger a 221G. Also, the third thing is any security related things that could trigger a 221G, something in your background or something that you can't control in the system that needs to be cleared up. That's the third reason out of your control that can trigger a 221G.
Okay, thank you for answering. We have a caller. Uh, Phone number ending 7674. Bhargav, you're on the air. It's coming from the conference bridge. Can you hear me? Hello? Hello? Bhargav, can you hear me? Hello? Bhargav, can you hear me? Bhargav, can you hear me? I think we've lost him. Um, okay, you can try again, or if you have trouble, you could just go to YouTube or LinkedIn, YouTube at Immigration Talk Show to post a comment. Now I'll take another. I still have a lot of questions floating in. Um, I'm trying to pick those which are relevant to 221G. Okay, this is again, I think we've had this discussion offline, but then I do see a comment here from YouTube, Sheikh Banu. After a 221G consulate interview, they asked for the passport back. After 2 days, status was changed from refuse to administrative processing. Does it mean it's approved? And how long does it take? So I know.
So good news, it probably means it's approved. If I adjudicate a case, have 221G requests, once you submit those, my first step is to ask for your passport back. I would never, in very small fraction, almost never happens, I would ask for the passport back if I wasn't intending to issue. The request for a passport is always the intention to issue. And the reason why we even give your passport back is because once you submit your documents, we want to ask for it so that we don't hold on to it, so that we just get it when we want to put a visa in it. So that's what's going on.
So, they're taking your passport, and then, again, we're not going to touch on this topic, but then the CEAC, based on my experience and, the internet research, it's often confusing with the updates on the travels.state.gov, the CESC portal. So,
Mm-hmm.
it could be refused, and, initially it is refused. Then it goes into processing. Correct me if I'm wrong, Yvette. It goes into processing. Then again, something happens. It goes back into refuse. So, don't get annoyed. Wait for the final email or final letter from the consulate. So, you're refreshing every other minute, and then you see something, you get stressed out. So, there's no reason to get stressed out. The world has to go on its own. It will. Okay, now we will take the next question here, from I have a lot of questions. Just, bear with me. Facebook user, uh, great info. Thank you, Facebook user. If you want to come back with a question, I'll definitely take that question for your kind word and the kind comment. Now, back to Prabhat from LinkedIn. Do you know any email ID where I can follow up for my case? Um,
I I actually, you can Google, so you can Google CIU, Consular Information Unit. The support travel docs email is just for appointments, but for CIU, each single embassy or consulate has their own. NIV at state is New Delhi, HYD at state.gov is Hyderabad, Chennai at state.gov is Chennai, Consular Calcutta at state.gov is Calcutta, and Mumbai Cons Direct at state.gov is Mumbai. So that is one way. CIU is a good way. That is monitored by a consular officer in the consular information unit and then pinged back to the H&L unit. Or on that sheet, you should have an email for how to submit your docs. A lot of people just revert back and say, hey, I've already submitted this. I would say bug them. It doesn't hurt. It really won't hurt you. Most of the time, if you have a big complicated case, and I think we'll talk about that later, if you have a big complicated case, please consult with an attorney. Consult with me. If you have a big complicated case, you're worried about something, that's different. But if you know, hey, I have an end client verification, I'm good to go, I just really need this to be done, then go ahead and ping them. Nothing bad can happen. So those are the two differentiating factors. I think I'll clarify that a little bit more. If everything you feel like is good to go ahead and just
Yeah,
bug them.
when you said, consult with an attorney, I'm assuming the legal counsel or the immigration attorneys are, they cannot represent at consulates. Is that true? They can only write letters.
They can write letters. So if they have, so if the, yeah, so to clarify, if you have a case where you feel that things could potentially go in the direction of a revocation, it's not a clear-cut case, and you want to have more curated, a more curated conversation and be more intentional, like there's something specific that you need to communicate about. It's not just a clear-cut case. Then an attorney can communicate with the units on your behalf. In addition, if you contact me, I can help you craft that email, and I also have an attorney on my staff that can communicate on your behalf. You could do it yourself, or you can get an attorney to do it for you. Does that make sense?
Sure. So we still have, I pushed the best ones to the end. So we still have more time. And please prepare your questions. And right after this, this is the way you can connect with Yvette. We'll come right back. welcome back. I will still take questions from our viewers before giving priority to my own questions. I spent some time preparing this, but you are making my life a lot easier. And if any of you have tried to Google the CIU emails, it would be nice if you can just copy and post on comments here, wherever you're watching YouTube, or I will put them right on the screen so it can help others. I know she's been that's audio, so it's if it's text,
Hard, yeah.
please. Now the next question is from Rabindranath. 221G white slip with no documents required but to appear for an in-person interview. I'm assuming you went for Dropbox. What
Mhm.
documents do I take? Will it be approved or will it go for administrative processing? It looks like he already has an administrative processing. So,
Right. So for Dropbox, there are things that will trigger the consular officer to go for 221G. Again, just like everything else, they look at your petition. They could say, I don't know this petitioner. This is a small petitioner. I've had a problem with that petitioner in the past. You could have gone from Amazon to a company that maybe I didn't hear of. There's something in your DS 160 that I have questions about. It could be literally anything that any time. Dropbox is, I look at it as like it's a privilege. If everything looks good to go, then I'll issue the case. But if I have any additional questions, maybe you've had a name change, like things that are small or things that are a little bit bigger, then I will ask that person to go in for a 221G interview to clarify whatever question I have that I cannot clear up just from the information I have in for the IW. Because when I get an IW H1B case, I have your I-797, your passport, that's it. Even something like a passport stamp. You went to a country that I have a question about, or you have a visa in there that I have a question about. I have a question about if you've been an F1 student, what you did during your F1 status. Have you been out of status? All these things can trigger a 221G, criminal history, anything and everything can trigger a 221G on IW. IW cases, everything is looking perfect. I'm ready to issue. I don't see any reason for me to 221G this applicant. To follow up on the second part of your question, you need to be as prepared as anybody else going for an H1B with the common questions that we talked about and the documents. So just bring everything with you. The consular officer may want to know something specific, so definitely be prepared, just like everyone else. Now, going into the interview, it's just going to be an interview, just like everyone else's interview. All the common questions are going to be thrown at you, and you're going to go for that official H1B interview.
okay. People are watching on X platform as well, Twitter. We are actually, I forgot to mention this, we are live streaming on Twitter as well. I have a question here from on Twitter. Trevor, I am taking your, I'm watching all the messages. Unfortunately, we can't render from Twitter onto this platform, but I will definitely ask this question. Thanks for posting, Trevor McCarthy. I'm not sure. Maybe Yvette has an answer for this. Hi, when does a Washington related administrative processing need a 221G clearance, or will the approval be given from an interested agency or agencies in Washington, D.C.? Wow, this is
Not,
something new.
I'm not sure what that means. From a 221G clearance from Washington D.C. Oh, it could be just some background check that needs to be done on you if it's from Washington D.C. Then that's usually when we correspond with Washington D.C. regarding an H1B case. Generally, it's us corresponding with USCIS or other agencies, but Washington means perhaps it's something security related. Maybe not even to do with you. It could be anything.
Okay, Trevor, if you can, post a follow-up question, if you can clarify, um, your post, so I will still try to ask if the
Yeah.
time permits. Uh, you know, Maybe we have to extend this a little bit. We are 50 minutes in the show. I do have, I don't like to be disrespectful to my viewers here. I will try to take as many as we can. and take another 15 minutes more, even if you're okay, beyond the
Mhm.
stipulated 1 hour timeline that you agreed for. I have a next question here from Sarah. Is it considered a good sign, or everything is a good sign, if the consular officer keeps the passport when they put someone in 221G? We answered this question, but debate if you can quickly cover this.
Whether the consular officer keeps your passport or not, it used to be when I worked in Delhi, I kept 221, I kept H1B passports in the beginning all the time because I figured I can adjudicate that case faster. If I need an end client letter and I kept your passport and you sent the end client to me tomorrow, I can issue your case very quickly. Okay. So that changed. That changed when H1Bs wanted their passport to travel, to do things. Okay. So now the more standard operating procedure is we keep your passport. We give your passport back in case something wrong is happening on the back end or further investigation requires us to hold on to the passport for too long of a time, and then we don't want to hold the passport hostage. So the short answer is it actually depends on the officer whether they want to keep your passport and give it back. It's their choice. There's no hard and fast rule, but the standard operating procedure is to give the passport back. So whether they keep it or give it back, it doesn't mean anything. It could just be a decision that they made. And it doesn't mean that it's less or more. They could have kept the passport for some other reason that is more serious. That's also an option or something that could have happened. So I wouldn't read too much into it.
Okay, but then I do have a crazy question here. What if they kept the passport and the embassy lost the passport?
That's very rare. I think I recall a couple of panicking moments, maybe once or twice in the duration in India, where people were frantically looking for a passport, but that is very rare. It's a little bit of organized chaos. We don't generally lose passports.
Because we've had an H1B case with the USCIS. It was pending for 2 years,
Oh wow.
and after 2 years, no, almost 2.5 years. At the end of this, it was close to running out the 3 year period. So we were constantly sending them emails, sorry, letters. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
hey, what's wrong with the case? Is there a problem, or there's a
Mm-hmm.
security check? After exactly 2.5, 3 years, close to 3 years, they came back stating we lost the file. Can you send another copy? So by the time it came approved, there was only 15 days left, because the 3 years is gone. It's a long time ago. I think now it's more organized with the electronic databases. I'm not sure this is going to be a relevant question, but this is from Sairam. If
Mm-hmm.
you can answer that, or if you want to skip it, he can still email you. I have a simple A and B case, and it got and attended an interview. Then consular officer said panel physician will contact. Still no response from them.
Do you know what an A and B case is,
I'm,
Dan?
I'm into digital marketing, so I know A and B test. So I don't know what is A and B case, to be honest with you. This is something he has posted more. Then he said, want to know more details on panel. Is this like adjustment of status case where you are possible NIV, green card? I would skip
Uh,
this one.
Dan, I can, in general, let me talk about panel physician. So 221G is 221G can be administrative processing. If you have a DUI, you will be sent to panel physician as an H1B. Generally, if anybody has a DUI, has questions about panel, it's very simple. Usually, panel physician will almost always clear you. But it is a process. If you had a DUI, you have to go to panel physician the first time. Generally, they don't say panel physician will contact you. It's always a list of panel physicians that you have to contact. Go attend your physical, answer routine questions, and then once that's cleared, you will get your H1B. For anybody out there with DUIs and concerned about panel physician, it's an easy process. Don't sweat it.
Okay, for the newbies here, DUI stands for driving under influence. It could be alcohol, drugs, and never do that mistake. Take a Uber, take a taxi if you have a party, And if you get pulled over, you get arrested, this is going to have serious immigration consequences. We posted a video on our channel for
Hmm.
attorney. So you got to be careful. This can haunt you forever at your green card process. You will have trouble depending on the seriousness of your violation. So you got to be careful. Don't drink and drive. I know there is marijuana, which is legal now in many states. So even that's, even though it's legal, alcohol is legal, but you get caught, you're done. So you got to be careful. I'm not scaring you. It's a fact. Now let's, quickly jump into the next question here. Um, from Joe on YouTube. Hey Joe, how you doing? H1B 221G case directs passport submission on the US visa portal.
Wow.
No email received. So I use the portal reference or wait for an email to submit the passport.
The 221G case directs passport submission to the US visa portal, no email received. Should I use the portal reference or wait for an email to submit it? I would follow the instructions that you received for in your 221G on how to submit. We have very clear instructions on how to submit your passport. Please follow those directions. I say we. I'm no longer a consular officer, and I do not represent the State Department anymore in any way. But it's hard to get away from that language.
Okay, but then again, for folks out there, I just want to add something here. If you are going for an H1B visa interview, or you already have been there, you have a 221G, it makes sense to get professional help. And I will post Yvette's contact info here. You can go to our website, UDETI Visa, Udeti Visa. It's a Sanskrit word. I'm sure people have joined late because it keeps uh, rolling around with these streaming platforms. And I always tell my viewers on the shows, don't believe others on forums. It is very dangerous with immigration. And I always tell them, if you go to a hospital, you don't get medical help from another patient. You either see a doctor or a nurse. So if you jump into asking other people, every case is unique, and you need to be extremely cautious. And you should not discuss your immigration matters with other applicants just like you. You're not in the same boat. People think we're all in the same boat. No, you're not in the same boat. It is very dangerous. Now, I will quickly jump into more questions here, Yvette. I would really, I thank everyone out there. You keep floating here. I think, even if we sit here for the next 24 hours, we are going to be doing this.
Hmm. I know.
Okay, any successful, I'm just, trying to pull comments here. Just bear with me. Okay, this is interesting from a LinkedIn user. I don't have the name anonymous. I submitted my H1B application through the Dropbox process, and I received my passport back with a request to attend an interview. Following the interview, my visa was initially approved, and I received an approval slip. However, after the week, got cut off with this question here. They followed up with, I'm assuming um, I'm not sure, LinkedIn user, because your comment is cut off. I will take this back if you can. I do have a character limit on my software here. So if you can, post the remainder of your question, I will certainly take it. We will come back into the next one. Um, Informative. Thumbs up from Mabu. Thank you, Mabu. We'll try to do our best. We'll continue to be informative and educational, this show and future shows as well. And again, Sumeda Rawal, from Facebook, informative. Thank you. Thanks for the thumbs up. Um, and Viplav also says, thanks for the information. Thank you. Um,
Thank you.
uh, I'm from India. Okay. Narendra, good. So if you have a question, please, um, Definitely. Hello, everyone out there watching from India. I know it's getting late, little late. You guys had a holiday in India, Pongal, Sankranti. So I wish everyone belated wishes. Now, there's a question from Hadi. Has anyone got a visa, H1B visa approved after getting 221G white slip and passport returned? Does that mean the visa is rejected? This has happened with me last week, and it was my third time H1B stamping.
I think that's the common process for I mean, that is the common process. You don't have to worry. Uh, it's 221G, white slip, passport back. That's the standard operating procedure. I, that is exactly, again, the consular officer probably asked you for some documents. And if that is the case, then they just want to review those documents and ensure that they like the petitioner and the end client, your job, and believe that everything that was originally on the USCIS petition looks good. Maybe they want to review your LCA. Maybe they ask for your LCA. LCA is a pretty big document. I don't generally like to review it at the window. If I have further questions, I'll ask for your LCA, do it at my desk. So that is the normal process. So I don't think you have anything to worry about just because that happened.
Okay. Vishal Deval, thumbs up. Thank you. Thumbs up. Um, Rahul Moria, thumbs up. Thank you. Then we have, I will take the next question from Jagdish. We'll just wait for Yvette to welcome back to
I'm
you.
here just getting a little sun out of my face.
Okay. At least, there's sun. I don't see sun here in New Jersey.
Yeah.
It's cool. They were talking about 12 inches, 14 inches, but then there was only 2 inches. I think I wasted 2 bags of rock salt for this little snow. And, schools are closed. Many schools in New Jersey are closed now. Uh, there's a question from Jagapati Babu from LinkedIn. Hey, my friend got a query in 221G. That is, your application requires an additional administrative processing before a final decision can be made. I think it's just a general email. So, what does it mean?
Yeah, again, they could have, so generally there's a few things, right? So consular officers, there are some people that don't need to worry about administrative processing as much. That's something I want to tell you. If you're going to Amazon, for example, it's your second stamping with Amazon, things should go pretty smoothly for you. Okay. So administrative processing generally means they want to do some checks. Generally, the consular officer will request your documents and then try to do the checks themselves. They'll go back to their desk and they'll say, let me Google this person's end client. Let me Google this person's employer. Let me look at this person's DS 160 one more time. If let me look at this person's tax returns. Let me see if the salary that they made in the United States makes sense. If you're a first time applicant, maybe they want to do some additional checks on the company that you're going to go to for the first time, especially if you've never heard of the company, you've never worked for the company. There are things that flag additional research on the part of a consular officer. And then once that initial research is done, the consular officer can either issue your case or they can do a couple of additional checks. They can do some consular investigations. They can tap into resources, organizations on the back end to do further investigation, either into your employer, the actual location, even as far as doing FDNS site visits, which means they request a visit from FDNS to that location to see if the number of employers that employer has mentioned is actually there, if they're making a product, that product is actually being made there, or end client verification, or maybe sometimes a combination of both. So that is what's going on 221G administrative processing, just to kind of give a little bit more information. But yes, that is a general question.
All right. We hope we answered the question, but then, how long does it take? She already answered that before. We're running out of time. I think, Yvette, we need to do a second episode, continue with this conversation. I do have another at least 20, 30 questions. I'm just trying to fish through these questions here. Um, if we already answered the question before, guys, I will not take that. My apologies. We are short of time now. We are already past the hour. Okay, now there's an interesting question here from Dheeraj. Received a 221G in July 22 after 1.5 years. I got this stamping. I think he did this in July 22. I think, that's what I'm assuming. But on USCIS case tracker, my case still showing the Department of State sent case for a review to the USCIS. We've just answered something similar. Is it okay to travel or not to the USA? So he has a stamping, but then the consulate, I think, still sent it to a review or uh, a revocation for some type of investigation. So did you catch the question, Yvette?
Does he have a valid visa to travel? Would be my question.
That's what it says. He's got the stamping done, but then the H1B, after the stamping, I think it went into some kind of a mess, and it was sent back to, when he checked it online with the receipt number on the USCIS website. Now it shows as they sent the case for a review to the USCIS. So does it sound anything
It
familiar?
sounds a little bit confusing because if he has a valid H1B visa and he's working as an H1B on that valid visa, then obviously he would already be in the US. But I'm not sure how that question is worded. I don't want to misspeak. I don't know the details of that question. So I don't want to give the wrong advice there. It's a
Okay,
little
so
bit confusing.
you have her email, on the ticker scrolling. I'm going to post that once again, but it's YB at UDETI. U as in umbrella, D as in David, E as in Edward, T as in Tom, I as in Indigo, UDetiVisa.com. So send her an email. Certain, questions have to, will need research. There's nothing like, there's an answer, but the question itself is a little confusing. I'll try to quickly jump into the next question. Yvette, I think, for my topics, I'm being ignored here, but then I would definitely take priority on these questions that are still flowing in like the snow out there and in our background here. Um, Okay, this is from Zuha. My H1B is currently under 221J administrative processing. I think I need some water. And it has been 9 months since the status was marked as refused. The reason is that my employer relocated the office. Any suggestions? Wow, it's the employer probably, that's the LCA location, place of work.
Right. So when USCIS approved the I-29 and all the information that your employer has submitted, when that petition was approved, when the LCA is developed, there are certain parameters and there's certain information and there's certain requirements that have to be met, such as that salary on the LCA and the work location. So it could be definitely, if the employer has changed locations and it's no longer in line with the LCA, it could be an administrative processing in order to figure out if the H1B, if you still qualify for the H1B, or if it's a basis for a revocation, if it's not following USCIS and Department of State rules and regulations based on your case. I hope that makes sense. So it could be the officer is reviewing it, or it could be that the officer has requested an investigation into that location. And if they're able to prove that the employer is not meeting the requirements that was set forth in the LCA, it can be a reason for revocation. But that is based on what I know about your case, the information I can give you.
Okay, I have an interesting question from Nikhil. Um, I got a 221G to submit degree certificates and transcripts. I have submitted those to the employer. And don't they submit those to USCIS when they file the I-129 petition?
I got a 221G to submit degree certificates and transcripts. I have submitted those to my employer, and don't they? Yeah, sometimes the systems don't really talk. We don't have your degree certificates and transcripts. It's very rare that we ask H1B applicants to submit those because the requirements of H1Bs are the education requirements are low, and usually Indian applicants have no problem meeting those requirements. But if the officer wants those documents, it's not something that we have. It's not something that we check on them. So yes, that's something that you could potentially be 221G for. We don't have that I-29 information.
By the way, folks out there, we have, we will extend for another 20 minutes because I see a lot of comments. Try to cover as much as we can. And we will come right after this. All right, welcome back. This is very knowledgeable today. I learned so much on 221G today, which I haven't learned in the last 20 years. And Sarah, again, from YouTube. Sarah, I would definitely take this. Usually I'd like to take one question from one party, but then, this would definitely help. This is something we haven't thought about, when we prepared our questionnaire. I'm sure Yvette has an answer, and she has two questions connected. I will display the question one, which is there's another follow up from Sarah, but here we go. Why would an embassy hold a passport for 6+ months while in 221G? And if they have to get the passport back, that's my question. What do they have to do?
You can email CIU or the H&L box and request your passport back. You can say, hey, I'm following up on this case and my passport has been held and I'd like to get my passport back. In extreme cases, the consulate or embassy, if it's fraud related, I'm not sure if your case is fraud related, but they could hold the passport for that reason. That's very rare. It could be that the officer decided to take your passport and now it's stuck. And that's why we always tell consular officers, and as a practice, give the passport back so something like this does not happen. For 6 months plus, it could be checks on your employer, meaning checks to see if your employer is in the location they said that they were. Those checks and those investigations are not done by the State Department, but rather FDNS. And sometimes there's a wait list for cases that need to be checked out, especially after COVID. So that could be one reason. There could be other reasons, but that's the most common reason for such a long period of time. So if that case needs a property management check or other types of checks, and there's a wait list for those investigations to be done, then your case could be pending because the consular officer hasn't received they have not received information that they were looking for. So that's the most likely scenario. But I would definitely at least try to get your passport back. You can ping them, hey, what's going on with my case? See if you can get a response that way. However, if investigations are still being done, then you can at least try to get your passport back. If they don't give you back your passport, then you fall into a very rare category of cases.
So Sarah still has a follow-up question on this. Is there any use of reaching out to the local congressman, and they contact the consulate? But I think that they send too many letters of recommendations, right? So, what is your take on this?
They do. They send a lot of letters of recommendations for a lot of people. I think any way to nudge to get your case noticed in case it's stuck in some sort of pipeline is good. Like I mentioned earlier, if it's benign, you know that there's no issue with your case, then you could do it yourself. And then if it's a little bit more serious, you can, trigger a congressperson. It'll get a little bit more attention, or, you can consult with my company or an immigration lawyer to get a lawyer to send official communication to the consulate or embassy. And like I said, I have a lawyer. I help craft that response in order to send it to the consulate or embassy, but only a congressperson, a lawyer can communicate on your behalf, or yourself can communicate on your behalf. So these means are just a way to push your case forward and get it noticed. Does that make sense? And a congressperson specifically isn't going to turn over a case or be like the end all be all. That's just not how it works. And I hope you're understanding that the limitations of that. It's interesting. It's an interesting email to get from me. I'll be like, okay, let me shuffle through the case. But if something serious is going on with the case or it's complicated, then I'm going to disregard the email and continue the administrative processing. So
No, I do have a question here. What is the authority of, in India, for example, right? It's a foreign consulate, and the Indian passport has no, the U.S. consulate has no jurisdiction on either Indians. There might be. I do understand the fraud or misrepresentation, but then what is the authority or jurisdiction of the consulates to hold an Indian passport which was not issued by the U.S. government?
they most of the time they don't. Most of the time they try to give that passport back. It's odd. They don't they hold If they hold it, they generally just hold it for a short period of time, but they're not holding passports as a practice. And that's why I'm saying you can ping them to try to get your passport back. Now, if it's a fraud related matter, uh, then the consulate will say, hey, this person is intending to commit fraud. We need their passport for X, Y, and Z reason, and that is a security issue because they're intending on going to the United States. But that's very rare. Most of the time, maybe the passport was taken by a consular officer by not by mistake, but with the intention to issue quickly. It could be put in cases and forgotten about, and so things like that happen less intentionally, or they intended on issuing, and then a couple other additional things came up. They should be giving that passport back. And as standard practice, consular officers, if they know that further investigations or something else needs to be done on the case, they should be returning the passport and telling them you continue to be in 221G administrative processing, but I'm giving you your passport back.
Okay, that's pretty interesting. We have 12 more minutes, but I will certainly take more questions. That'll be 90 minutes on this show. But then, I definitely have one interesting question here, something to do with, but again, we will come right after this.
Are you an IT consultant seeking a new opportunity? We offer job placement services for US citizens, green cards, EADs, and visa holders. We also sponsor various work visas like H1B, E3, TN, and green cards. 20 plus years of experience in the industry, exceptional employee benefits, highly rated by our employees, global presence with 200 plus recruiters and direct clients. Connect with us. Call us on the number 833 412 8472 or mail us at support@higheritpeople.com or visit our website www.higheritpeople.com.
All right, welcome back. I'll jump right into the next question from James Carney. H1B. This is definitely, I know there are a lot of students moving from F1, then they take day one CPT, and then there is an RFE from the USCIS because they don't like the day one CPTs. 20 hours becomes 40 hours at school. I'm sure she doesn't want to go into, as an employer myself, I see this, we tell people, hey, this is, you have completed your OPT, STEM OPT, now you're back to school again. And, during pandemic, people were changing status to F1. But then to take this question and push this into Yvette to get some kind of insight, H1B stamped applicant in a day one CPT program. So I think I'm assuming after the day one CPT, then he got the H1B, picked in the lottery, and got a stamping. No, tried for a stamping, I guess. Got 221G in April 2023. This is 2024. Anyway, is this? I'm assuming 2024. No, no, it's not April yet. Is this typical? Does day one CPT face more scrutiny? I was just talking about it. Usually, 221G is resolved in 60 days. Correct? That's based on the internet research. I don't think so. But Yvette, if you can quickly throw some light on this, we are running out of time. Thank you.
Okay, so first thing is if you go on Udeti Visa's YouTube channel, I just did a great presentation on OPT CPT for students with an expert. So he talks about CPT and OPT. So if you're interested in that, he's awesome. Ron Cushing does a great job on that YouTube video, so you can go check that out. H1B stamping for an applicant in day one CPT, is this typical? Not typical. Could be considered a red flag for the consular officer. Maybe the consular officer wants to see, have you completed your education program? I don't know. You don't say, have you completed your education program? Did you misrepresent yourself in the last adjudication for your F1? There could be things going on there. They could want to look more into your petitioner. So it could just be, it could have nothing to do with your day one CPT. There's a wide variety of reasons. You can go into 221G for all the normal reasons, which is like end client verification and some questions about your petitioner, or they could want to check out your transcripts and education or history, or they want to see if you somehow misrepresented yourself during the last interview. It may not be a material misrepresentation. It may not matter. Even if you told them you wanted to go to XYZ school, you're still within your you can still legally transfer. There's nothing illegal about day one CPT programs, but the consular officer may say, okay, this is a red flag, or it may have nothing to do with CPT and have some other questions about your employer. So that probably doesn't answer anything because the answer is it depends. But Dan, is that making sense?
Yes, yes, of course, of course. So she posted a video. I just, have the YouTube handle on the screen for you. So if you, quickly, you can jump into her YouTube channel to watch those videos for, I particularly like those thumbnails.
Thanks.
That's where I was kind of, wow, this is what's going to happen. Usually they say don't judge the book by its cover, but we have to judge these videos by its cover.
Oh,
Uh,
that's nice. The
Thumbnails are
graphic designer, it's not
right.
me.
Okay. Uh, we do have a lot of amazing graphic designers. I want to really thank them. Our lead graphic designer Mike Mahbub Rahman and the team, who's been response like midnight. I just have to send a message. Thank you guys out there, Higher IT People team in Dhaka, Bangladesh, for the extensive support for making this happen. And we have a great coverage today. I hope we are helping people. I'm just scrolling down the comments real quick. If I'm missing anything here, thank you for getting that email. I'm not sure if this is the right
Dan, this is not the correct email. This is
fraud prevention.
you're going to be emailing the fraud prevention unit if you email that, and I would not recommend hanging
Okay.
up the fraud prevention unit. I mean, it wouldn't hurt. I don't know. It's going to scare you, but you want the CIU email. So
So Google CIU email, right?
CIU email, yes. I can give it to you in the private chat, Dan.
Okay. I can flash it,
Just,
before we end this show.
oh, perfect. I'll get that
Nadi
for you.
Patiraja, double thumbs up. Okay. I still like the Indian thumbs up, the Coke version. If it's double, yes, a lot of sugars. Gotta be careful. I'm not sure if you're familiar with there's a cola soda in India, which is
Mm-hmm.
it's called a thumbs up.
Thumbs up cola. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So they had a history. Uh, Double thumbs up is we still relate back to. I'm originally from India myself, so we have answered this. Savan Varma, thumbs up, and I do have these emails of the CUI. I am going to copy this now and post it on the screen for our viewers. I hope that helps. Give me 1 second.
I'm actually going to India on Thursday, so I'm excited. I'm going to be there for a month. So, yeah, I'll be taking appointments from there and just working from there, but I'm
Sure.
excited.
Thank you. So she's going to be in India. If you are, you have the, the email, her phone number, everything is under the ticker at the footer of this video. So you'll see scrolling. You can, connect with her. And also, I do have other questions, not relevant to this topic, but then I am reading your comments. You have our email support at hireitpeople.com. That's more relevant to an immigration attorney. I do have questions from people about diversity, uh,
Hmm.
visa categories, and stuff like that. And unfortunately, we don't have much time today. But then here we go. These are the emails. Embassy New Delhi, NIVND at state.gov. Hyderabad, HYDCEA at state.gov. Chennai. These are a little different. I think the prefix is a little different. So if you guys want to go back to 1 hour 26th minute on this video, you should be able to find these emails. You can take a screenshot. I'll leave it open for a few seconds. So if you'd like to copy these emails, um,
I,
Harshraj Singh Immigration Talk Show is informative. Thanks for providing us with immigration relevant content. Thank you. And now I'm Trevor. Oh, you came back from Twitter to, thank you for, give me 1 second here. We have some background noise. Okay. How can I be prepared for the consular officer? How do post related issues? I think, this is more a personal matter when you're talking about investigations or verifications. I, I would suggest you connect Yvette at her email, yb at udetivisa.com. Now, the next one, Darcy, I just answered your question. You can send us an email, support at hireitpeople.com. We will let you know the next show with an attorney. Then I will definitely get you some help from an immigration attorney. Now, before we close this session for today, I do have these questions. I would definitely request Yvette to come back. I know you're traveling to India. We should definitely do a second show because I still have a lot of questions which are still in the air. I don't want them to, flow down into the snow and then, boil down. I will take one last question here from Anthony. Received a 221G slip in December. My current status is case sent back to you. I think we answered something like this. Uh, I would definitely skip this. I'm sorry, Anthony, if you can rewind because we don't have the time. We did answer this question on this video. Please rewind. Um, STEM degree H1B Sai, this is more of an immigration attorney related question. We do have, by the way, guys, with the holidays, we have a little lag, but then we do have at 12 p.m. Eastern time every Wednesday and every Friday. We have two back and back shows with two attorneys, expert attorneys. So you can definitely come back. Not tomorrow, Wednesday. We don't have the show, but Friday you can come back at 12 p.m. Eastern time and get your questions answered. We are only trying to um, answer questions related to 221G. Um, then I'm just trying to, make sure I'm covering everyone here. Zishan Zahir, this is about advance payroll. So this is again an immigration attorney question. We are circling around 221G. Um, I can just, show these comments here. Um, and I have a trouble here. KP Chandler, hello Dan, hope you're doing well. Yes, I am well. Thank you for asking. This question is for you. Okay, for me. All right. Thank you. Um, okay, I will answer this, KP. Um, the employer is not responding, and they should go for a freedom of information. Go to USCIS's website, request a freedom of information if they're not responding with a copy of the H1. And Sel, sorry if I mispronounce this. Selvantiran, uh, thank you for the great information session. Thank you, Trevor McCarthy. Thanks again. Cheers, mate. Where's Yvette from Illinois? I'm from Wichita, Kansas. Okay, Trevor. I hope it's cold out there, Kansas. And having said that, please subscribe to Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. I'm going to post once again contact information of Yvette if you should need any help. And as I said, try to get a consultation and prepare yourself before you go for that visa interview. Before we end the session, is there a golden tip for today's show, Yvette?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think a lot of people need to be really nervous about the H1B interview. As we discussed, the H1Bs generally go very smoothly at the visa window, especially if you come from a big employer. If you come from smaller employers, that's okay too. Just be prepared. Please have an end client letter, have your tax returns if you've already been in the United States. Make sure you have some pay stubs, have your LCA on you, be able to describe your job duties. Prepare for the interview, be able to describe your job duties, where you work out of, understand what your LCA says you're supposed to be working out of, and you should be able to tell the consular officer exactly where you're working out of, what you do, how you got your job. So be prepared for those questions, have those documents in case they're asked for. If you have a end client and then there's middle vendor relationships, like this petitioner has this middle vendor, then this middle vendor, make sure you understand that relationship and have documents, have a letter that states your salary, work responsibilities. Make sure that all of your documents are recent, they're dated from the last month. So these are my top tips to prepare for your H1B interview, to alleviate any of those questions that the visa officer can have, so you can avoid 221G processing. That's my tip. Be prepared.
Okay, I just want to add something here, but ask you one last question.
Sure.
When you're referring to end client letter, there are two topics here. One, the employer-employee relationship is gone, right? After a legal battle between a association and then um, but then when you say end client letter, you're referring to EVC, like a employer vendor client model. But is there any other requirement if somebody is sponsored by a direct employer, for example Amazon or an IBM?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
they just take the employment agreement, that's it, right?
Right. Yes, exactly. So say Infosys, I don't know if that's a good example. Say your petitioner is a large company and your end client is Walgreens, then you need an end client letter from Walgreens talking about that relationship, and be prepared to answer, how did this person become your end client? How long have you been working for Walgreens? If your petitioner is Amazon, then you're working internally within Amazon and you just need a letter from Amazon stating that you're an employee of the company, how much you make, and those work responsibilities. They're just two different H1B models, and they both require different things.
Okay, thanks Yvette for the excellent. I'm supercharged with 221G. So viewers out there, and thanks for the patronage. We will come back. Please subscribe. We will be posting those notifications on YouTube. Unless you subscribe, I'm not forcing you, but then you will not get those notifications. I'm going to prepare more topics. We still have, I have only covered 25% of the 221G today, to be honest with you. There are still about 20 questions left, and we wanted to get into more details of 221G, dig deeper, but we will try to come back with an episode. Yvette is traveling, but once she's back, maybe we'll jump back into those questions as well. And if you need help from Yvette, you can, her phone number, contact info is right on the screen. And if you are looking for a project placement, my email is dan@hireitpeople.com. We will definitely help you We also, if needed, and based on the regulations, we also sponsor work visas, including green cards. You can set up a call with one of our specialists. You can visit us at hireitpeople.com. Having said that, have a great day. Thank you, Yvette.
Thank you
Have
so much, Dan. Thank you, viewers. Thank you so much.